Welcome back. Attorney General Bill Barr had the first word on the Mueller report, but Democrats want to make sure that he doesn't have the last word, and they are already pushing for more sunlight. NBC News reports that House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler is in contact with the Justice Department to set a date for Barr to testify. Democrats on the committee say they are meeting tonight to discuss their next steps, which could include calling for Robert Mueller to testify himself. That is something several Democrats have already floated. And sources also tell NBC News the FBI is prepared to brief Congress's so-called Gang of Eight on the counterintelligence findings of the Mueller probe. But House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told Democrats this weekend that she would reject any classified briefing. She wants members to be able to talk about the report's findings publicly. Joining me now is Virginia Democratic Congressman Gerry Conley. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee, and he joins me now. Congressman, nice to see you. So let me ask the large question first, sort of the big elephant in the room. How can you convince the public there's more to investigate here without the appearance of this being sour grapes?
Well, even taking the premise of that question, Chuck.
And you get where I'm going here, and I'm being a little, I'm being a little facetious, but you get my drift.
But we got a 4-page summary not written by someone named Robert Mueller. I think drawing sweeping conclusions from that 4-page summary is premature at the very best. So we want to see the full report to see what did Mueller have to say and how did he amplify these. So he concluded that he could neither determine there was a crime of obstruction of justice nor could he exonerate the president. Well, that's stunning. In other words, he thought there could have been a crime committed by the president of the United States. I don't know about you, I want to know a lot more about that. And we don't have any amplification in the 4-page summary written by the Attorney General. Even on collusion, what he found was no criminal conspiracy to collude with the Russians by anybody in the campaign. That's good, that's reassuring, but that doesn't address the many, many Russian contacts and the receptivity of so many operatives in the Trump campaign to Russian overtures. What was that all about? And we don't want that to be the new normal in American politics.
Do you worry that essentially Mueller went right by the book, and he had a very narrow view of where he could go, and Bill Barr, who wrote that memo for all of us to see, had a very expansive view of how much power he had over this, and he took it. Mueller went narrow, and Barr went maximum, and you guys got checked.
I think there's something to that, and I think also, frankly, one interpretation of what's happening is that the Attorney General, working hand in glove with the White House, is gaming the system to frame the narrative. The very fact that the way you framed your question tells you how effective that's being so far. Somehow collusion is completely exonerated. The report's pretty dead. We need to move on. I mean, those are all White House talking points. And they don't reflect what I think is probably in the Mueller report, and they don't reflect the concerns we have here in the Hill and those of the American people.
How do you catch up on this narrative? I mean, I looked at this and you're just like, wow. I mean, Barr filled a vacuum, and you don't know what you can push back on because you haven't read the report. I mean, it's a pretty unfair position to put Congress in.
I think that's right, and I think it puts the White House at an advantage that they are cynically using to their full benefit, and with the aid and comfort of the Attorney General of the United States, and that's rather distressing.
You know, here's my concern. You know, we had Comey do things one way, and we didn't like it. We didn't like. You know, there was an uproar. He took matters into his own hands because he was worried about it getting politicized. Here was a case where Mueller put it into the chain of command as the statute recommended, and now we're still worried it's getting politicized. We now have 90% of the country not having a lot of confidence in how this rule of law system works. Fair or unfair, how do we fix this?
Well, I think we have to allow this part of the play to play out. So we gotta let everybody have the same base of information, which is namely the report itself. We in Congress also need to be provided with the underlying documentation to justify the findings Mueller made or did not make. And I think there are still a lot of unanswered questions raised by the four-page summary itself, but also by the underlying Mueller document that need to be addressed.
Do you think, who do you want to testify first, Barr or Mueller?
Well, right now, I think the Attorney General, because he's got some explaining to do. He made what seems to be a very quick, if not rash, decision to go on the side of there was no crime committed in terms of obstruction of justice, even though Mueller gave him the alternative of I can't exonerate him from a crime. We want to know all about what was that. If there's a discrepancy, substantial discrepancy between the Mueller report itself and Barr's summary, we want to know all about that too. What were you thinking? And why did you deliberately change the meaning of the report, if that's what happened?
How do you get the Mueller report? Are you guys worried that this is going to be a lot harder? Is this going to be like the last scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark and it gets buried in a warehouse in New Mexico?
That's quite an image. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to get the Mueller report one way or another. I will say that I think really it's in the Republicans actually on the horns of a dilemma here. If they withhold the Mueller report or substantial parts of the Mueller report, I think it feeds the narrative they've got something to hide, and it keeps alive sort of the conspiratorial theories about what this is all about. If, on the other hand, they release the Mueller report in full, I suppose they risk some embarrassing information or worse. They got to pick their poison here. But in either case, I think it's in their interest to release the report and err on the side of transparency rather than look like, while they seem to be winning the narrative, why do you want to suddenly turn that around?
Let me ask a final question. After you get to see the Mueller report, will you accept his conclusions once you get to read Mueller's report? Not Barr's version, but Mueller's version. Will you accept his conclusions?
Well, I'm certainly inclined to accept his conclusions, but what are conclusions? He didn't make a conclusion on obstruction of justice. So I'm going to have to figure out, why didn't you? And by the way, why didn't you subpoena the president and put him under oath so that you had his sworn testimony to help you resolve that issue? So I think there are a lot of things he didn't conclude, or apparently didn't conclude, that we're going to want to know a lot more about. And that's why ultimately I think Robert Mueller will have to testify before Congress.
Well, I certainly want to hear him answer that one question, which is why didn't you subpoena the president? That's for sure. Anyway,
I think it's a very important one.
Congressman Gerry Connolly, Democrat from Virginia, from the Oversight Committee. Thanks for coming on and sharing your views.
Thank you,
Much
Chuck.
appreciated. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.